So let's dive in today. I am excited. I'm excited. We have my mentor, friend, Dr. Joe Currier. I've a lot of you have heard me talk about Dr. Joe. Some of you have met him, not many of you, but some of you have met him in the past, be it on this program or even in person a few years back. But excited to have you on, Dr. Joe. And so today, what we'll do, main topic is how to have difficult conversations, right? That'll be the main topic. And but we're going to break this hour into different sections. First section, I want to dive into Dr. Joe and his background and just who he is and what he's about, and then we'll get into relationships, okay? Because relationships really the base of conversation and of communication, and then we'll get into a bulk of the conversation today will be around how to have difficult conversations and the mechanics of that, right? Like, how do you actually structure these conversations when you're talking to an employee, a team member, even a little bit of spouse, right, a partner, and then tying that back into actual relationships and how it all works. And so it's a lot of what we're talking about is very deep and can be complex, but we'll do our best to make it as simple as possible for you. And so you can take some elements of it and apply it to your day-to-day life. Cool? All right. Dr. Joe, like I said, my mentor friend, I've known Dr. Joe now for many years. But we started working together, I would say 4 years ago. I was always part of his work. About a 10-year period, I was in corporate America, and the company I was working for was called the Legis Group, and Dr. Joe was very instrumental in that organization and teaching everyone within that organization how to lead and how to develop teams, and a lot of it from a cultural perspective and a partnership perspective, but very, very influential in my life and a lot of what I speak about and how I lead and how I structure a lot of the material that I try to present to you all. Dr. Joe's been a great influence in my life, and it's an honor and a pleasure always to have a conversation with you, Dr. Joe, and definitely a treat here to have you with all of us. So thank you again for being here.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Nate.
Yeah. So let's dive in. I want to dive into Dr. Joe, okay, and just learn a little bit more about you, Dr. Joe, and just kind of do a flyover of your life, and then we'll get into everything else.
I'm going to try and be real brief. At 80 years old, that becomes harder and harder these days, but I'm going to ask you to give me the hook whenever. It's also, Nate, an example, and I mean this so sincerely, that over my early career, like with the Allegis Group for 30 years, I was a chief learning officer, but I quickly changed that to chief listening officer. I've learned so much over the years, and you give me a lot of credit. I thank you, but much of it's been through young men and women like yourself, so thank you. I'm not sure if this camera is catching me well, but I promise you I haven't been on a 3-day bender, although that's happened at times once or twice. I'm just getting over some cancer surgery on the face, and the stitches are still in, and I can't shave for a while. So at any rate, I'm trying to take that easy and get on to another chapter here. Years ago, I wrote a book called Connect the Dots, and it's called Connect the Dots: How Significant Life Events Impact Your Life, Your Leadership Style, and Competitive Performance. And I did not realize it then, but I really started writing this book when I was a little kid. 4 years old, I was in a car accident with my dad, and he was killed. I thought he was asleep. He evidently had broken his neck. There was no blood. And until a police officer came, I was just this kid lost. And I ended up in an orphanage for about 4 months. It's a crazy story, but people were really good there. But I learned early on to hide. If you ask me, how are you doing? I'd say, I'm great. I never used words like I need. I just hid, and I whatever. At any rate, I ran the streets in Albany, New York, and this priest, I know there's a lot of stories about the horrors of what's been happening, but there's a priest, Father Handron, who rescued me. He's a man who, whenever I was in trouble and the cops grabbed me, he'd come down, and just time after time. And I want you to not to laugh here, but as I got older, I literally had to tell my girlfriend, I think I'm going into seminary. And I went into the seminary thinking I had a calling. And I spent 1 year in Mater Christi Seminary, and I loved it. But I realized that I wanted to rescue people like Father Handren, but I didn't want to wear the collar. And I left. And these are in the early 1960s, early mid to 60s. And I saw a poster and it said, the Marines are looking for a few good men. And I really was lacking an identity. I had no direction, no education. So I joined the Marine Corps and I went off to two tours and thought I might spend a career there. But as you can imagine, if you've heard the stories of what the 70s or late 60s was like, it was crazy. So I eventually resigned, get to the point, and ended up as a police officer in New York City. I worked for the Port Authority. And I thought I had left the storm of Vietnam behind me and all that crazy stuff. And I met this incredible young lady. And here's one of the points about connected dots. My uncle came down from Albany and he visited me and he said, Joey, I don't like you as a cop. I don't like you as a police. You're going to get hurt. And he said to me, have you ever thought of being a psychologist? And I had said, what? You're talking to a kid in the 1940s and 50s. We didn't even know what a psychologist was. He says, well, he said, it's kind of like being like Father Handren, but you can dance with that pretty little girl over there, who is now my wife. And he made me promise to go over to the education department. And I did. And I asked a lot of questions. And after a long journey with my wife, typing and doing all the whatevers, ended up with a PhD and started to do a lot of stress management work and whatever. And I loved clinical practice. It was fabulous. Started to do a little bit of consulting. And a friend of mine from Brooklyn said, Joe, would you work with the Cleveland Browns? They're looking for somebody who could help them in the summer camp there. And I thought, Cleveland Browns? I'm New York, baby. I mean, at any rate, with Sam Retigliano, I got a taste of consulting within the athletics area and did a little bit of work with the Olympic team and was just really just loving everything I was doing. And all of a sudden, one day, the phone rings. And I swear this is authentic and accurate. My secretary says, Dr. Joe, there's a man on the phone and he's calling from Baltimore. I'm in New York, by the way. And he said to me, Dr. Joe, yeah. He said, write a book you wrote on leadership. He says, can you do an executive boot camp for me? He said, I see you in the Marine Corps. Yeah. Can you do a boot camp for me on leaders? And I said, what? He says, I got children supervising children. Steve Bisciotti, just starting this little company called the Legis Group, which today is a zillion-dollar organization. And 35 years later, I had the privilege of building an executive institute, a leadership institute, and frankly, it became a laboratory. I met folks like Nate and whatever. At one point in time, to get this story to an end here, Steve said he was going to retire. His cousin, Jim Davis, is going to keep running the company. He says, I'm buying the Baltimore Ravens. He said, would you come with me? So I ended up also consulting, two Super Bowls later. I thought we were going to have a third one this year. So that's the journey I've been on. And it's taken me through a life series. And it brings me to the point of connect the dots. Everything that you're doing today and the things you're doing down this road here, again, it connect the dots. What, so what, now what? Look for your marker events, see how they're shaping your beliefs, your habits, etc., so that when you look for the next event, you're going to be ready to go. So that's a little bit of quick history there. Sorry for the long story there.
That was great. That was great. No, and when I looked at Dr. Joe, people ask me like, hey, who is he? What has he done? And it's hard for me to describe, to give him an actual, call it like quote unquote title. I always say like leadership and organizational psychologist, right? It's kind of like or performance psychologist. But when it comes to, okay, how do I get the best of the best out of an individual, and then more importantly, a team, and max out this thing called relationship, right? And when I say relationship, I'm not talking about friendships necessarily, right? That's very much part of it, but more about partnerships.
They screw things up terribly, friendships. Because you make necessary lies, you make excuses.
Yeah.
Dad's a good guy, but he just whacked mom. He is a
Mm.
great man. He also just whacked mom. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're great. You're great.
You know,
And
with
so
relationships, the first part, and you're already touching it, Nate, always ahead of me. It's about the self. Are you real? Are you authentic? Do you really know your journey? There's an old saying, you know, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, but that's nowhere. And most people, frankly, are on paths that you go, what the hell are you doing? What's your goal? What's your mission? They look at you and make up all kinds of crazy stories. Be quiet.
So when we get into like connect the dots, right? And the main thing of this conversation and this hour is how do you have difficult conversations? And a lot of what we have to really be aware of is how am I showing up in this conversation? And what are past events and these marker moments in our life that are impacting me and influencing the way that I show up right now? Am I in survival mode? Am I in thrive mode? When these types of things, externally happen around me, how do I behave? And so these all influence our communication. And so it's always good to be aware, aware of those pieces.
Most of the times there's different dialogues going on, Nate. Most of the times there's different dialogues going on. People are talking, but they're not even on the same dialogue. They're making up stories. For example, I always let people know, again, any important conversation is really three separate conversations. There's the content, there's emotions, and the impact. Data points are there, and we get into, who's correct here. We get into who being right, as if that's the goal. At the same time are the affect, the emotions. Some of it's body language. People get into your space. They make facial set. They choose words. They take the tone. They may put their hand on you. And then the last part is the impact. It feels as if you think I'm stupid, like you're talking down to me. We need to make sure that people are talking on all three levels and aware of the impact of these three. Relationships, by the way, are connected in the second two. Emotions and the impact, not on content. I'm married almost 60 years now. And I used to think, and you can ask my wife, I got the door locked here right now. I used to think that being right was the goal of communication versus being understood, being heard. And at one point, my wife said, Joe, you're always right. And I thought she was being sarcastic or whatever. She says, the problem is it's like you're on an island and I'm in the water. You're not listening to me. And it was like, oh boy, maybe got to think about that a little bit.
So break those down again. You said content, emotions.
Content conversations. That's about the data, the facts, the information. The at-risk point of content conversation is we get in debates. Who's correct? My truth, your truth, the truth. The second one is affective. It's about the emotions. How does each person feel? Not only through the words, but through the nonverbals. What? What? Look at the facial set. What? That says what? Are you stupid? I mean, how many times has we, shameful as a parent, asked a child, look at me, are you stupid? In the facial set. What the hell kind of language is that? And the last one is the impact. It's the belief. It felt as if he was laughing at me. It felt as if I was doing a workshop not too long ago, and they kept saying the word, you as a partner, like of the Allegis group. And he says, Doc, why do you keep saying that? I'm not a partner, I'm a producer. The partner had gone out of our language. I'm only as good as my next event, how well I can produce. Partnership is different. So those are the three: content, emotions, and impact.
Going to the group, let me ask the group this question. How are relationships formed? Go and put it in the chat, say it out loud. How are relationships formed? Beautiful. It's connection, right? Relationships formed are on connection, right?
Believe connections.
Elaborate on that.
I can assume I've made a connection with you. Did you tell me that? Did I ask you? Did we have a real conversation? Versus I can assume leaders say, we're one team, guys. Yes. Are we?
Love it. So you have connections. And so then there's the piece of I look at, okay, let's say I hire a plumber, right? There's a relationship established there. I hire a plumber to go do a service within my house. Someone made a connection with this individual, so it's more of a physical connection, and then there's but it can be very surface level, right? And then you have a deeper connection when, let's say, you're bringing someone into your actual real estate team, or you're hiring an assistant, or you're hiring anyone, and so that deepens. How do you enhance relationships?
Nate, can I jump
Communication.
for 1 second? Can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
When you ask me about relationships, do you mean what I do versus who I am? Are you asking me what I call the kimono paradox? Are you really asking me, should I have shared about cancer on here? Should I share something about, or what the hell's that got to do with business? And oh, by the way, you better not show up with you know what. If your head starts leaking, real men, powerful women, don't you start to cry. So are you asking me to show emotions too? What I do versus who I am? Because relationships, I think people hide into what I do. I'm not sure I'm prepared to tell you who I am. Nor do you want it. Is it appropriate? That's a big question. Sorry.
Yeah. I love it. This is great. This is great. Um, so we have connection, right? And we enhance and deepen a relationship through communication. So what Dr. Joe was saying there, how are you communicating to people? And what is that looking like? How open are you going to be? How deep are you getting into this? All right. And I do believe that relationships are sustained with commitment. And am I committing to this relationship and committing to myself and committing to this relationship to get even deeper with the relationship? So let me ask this question. Jordan Hill, let me ask you. Go and unmute.
Okay.
Are all relationships created equal?
No,
Why?
because they have different purposes in your life.
Okay, elaborate.
So a relationship with a spouse or a family member, the purpose, they're in your purpose for your life and in your mission statement and part of it. Some relationships are meant for shorter season, some are meant for a lifetime season. And so it's just how they impact your mission statement and purpose for your life.
Really good. Really good. Let me ask a couple others. David Quintrell. Are all relationships are all relationships created equal?
No. I had someone teach me one time that relationships are like a math equation. They can add to you. They can take away from you. They can multiply you. They can divide you. And so in that, you gotta focus on what that relationship is doing, and get rid of the ones that take from you and divide you, and bring in closer the ones that add to you. And some equal you, and you just. And so that's how I see a lot of relationships.
Really good. Let me go someone different. Preston, let me ask you, are all relationships created equal, and why?
I would say no. Like for example, like the relationship I have with my mom or my dad, for example, like I'm gonna want to pour more into those kind of relationships than, just like an acquaintance at work that I don't know as well. Since like my mom and dad play such a key role in my life, I'm gonna be more apt to care more about that relationship and spend more time with them because of that.
Really good. Really good. And so relationships, I believe, are broken down into 3 different levels. Okay? They're broken down into 3 different levels. And Dr. Joe, I'm going to break down these 3 levels, and then I want you to provide context to it if you can do that. So I look at level 1, level 2, level 3, right? And when I've referenced Dr. Joe in the past, R1, R2, R3, you've heard that language before. Level 1 is transactional, right? It's a very surface level relationship. And we're in this thing together for a reason, right? Level 2 is intentional. Are you intentional about being in this relationship? Am I intentional about this thing? And are they intentional about this thing? It's about self and others. It's about you and me. Okay. And we're both in it. And we're both intentional about this relationship to improve it and to make it better. And the third is unconditional. So you have transactional, intentional, and unconditional. The way I look at them, my kids, the way I look at my wife, that is unconditional love. And a team is different than a family. Let me be very clear. A team is different than a family. Teams are highly, highly, highly conditional. Families are unconditional. So when we say, hey, as a team, we are like a family, I disagree strongly. And a team is not a family. I can treat you like family. I can hold you in this. There's a American psychologist, Carl Rogers was his name. He's since passed, and he would always talk about holding people like when talking to psychiatrists in a clinical practice. He would always talk about holding his patients in this unconditional positive regard, right? Zero judgment. I'm going to hold you regardless of what you say, how you say it, just you as a human being. I'm going to hold this unconditional positive regard about you. Right? Now, when you take that, and I can do that as a human being, brother to brother, sister to sister, I'm gonna love you as a human being, different than a team. Right? So I want to make sure that we're separating those two. But I can be extremely intentional about the relationship on a team. Again, not friendship, but partnership. How are we looking to partner as a band of brothers and a band of sisters? How are we really going to get this thing going where we're all holding each other accountable to a set of expectations and standards that we're all agreeing to? Right? We could be intentional about that piece. And I need to understand, okay, am I in R2 with this individual and they in R2? Right? So I look at Michael Corey and Mike Matkin, right? Business partners and what they're doing. Okay. Are you each intentional about growing what it is that you're growing? And not only are you doing that, right? This is a rhetorical question. Not only are you doing that on a business front, but just the interpersonal relationship between the two of you. Are you staying connected? Are you intentional about doing that? Or do you feel separation? Are you stepping into what it is? Because if you're not together and you're not right, then nothing that you're doing is going to be right. And then are you willing to have that conversation, that difficult conversation, to get back on track and to be intentional about what it is that you're doing and forcing clarity and getting deep there, right? And you can love each other unconditionally, right? I love Austin unconditionally, Austin Cheviron, but if we're not together from a business standpoint, right, for the team, that's different, right? And we have to be focused around that. And we have to get on the same page. Like, are we in this together or not? What are we doing? And are we, Jordan Hill and Mike Hill, different, right? Like you guys, it's a very unique situation, right? You have both a business and you're married. And you know what I mean? And so it just have all of these different dynamics that happen. And it's a beautiful thing, but it just adds different layers to how you evaluate it and how you look at it, right? What hat am I wearing when? And is there clarity in that, when I'm wearing this hat? And then are you, Tucker, right? I look at, Maddie and Gabby, right? All of you, David, all of you that, okay, where am I at right now with how I'm approaching this conversation, and how is the level of relationship that I have with this individual, and where do we stand? Okay. So relationships, right? Relationships are based on trust. Yes, give me a head nod if you agree with that. Relationships are based on trust, right?
All of them? Because I don't think R1s are. I think there R1 relationships are based upon interaction, contracts around what we do. So I wonder about on level 1 versus 2 and 3.
Yeah. So this is the way that I look at it. There's five elements of trust. Okay. And we've broken them down into, I've broken them down into an acronym, okay? TRUST. All right, TRUST. Trust is just basic trust, right? I believe that you are going to do what you say you're going to do. Okay, so let's go back to that plumber example. I hire a plumber. There's this inherent trust that he says he's able to fix my toilet. And I believe, based on maybe credibility, belief that, established, there's this just inherent trust that I'm seeing and I hear. And so because of that, and I would quantify that as, say, an R1. And, okay, then there's the R of trust is respect. Okay. And respect has a lot of different layers. I respect the individual as I'm holding them in a high regard. There's this respect of just care. I care about the individual. There's the respect of boundaries, right? And knowing that I'm not going to cross certain boundaries, if I'm getting too deep into a conversation. I look at that. You is understanding. Am I seeking to understand? Do I understand this individual's situation and where they're at and what they're doing? And am I asking questions and truly listening, like you were talking about earlier, Dr. Joe? Am I making that most of the conversation? Am I really understanding who this individual is and what they're about? S is straight talk. And T is transparency. And so am I speaking my truth? Am I being this radically honest human being to the person that's sitting right across from me? And are they doing the same? It's mutual trust. Right? Relationships, intentional relationships, our two relationships, intentional relationships are based on mutual trust. And are you doing what you say you're going to do? And a lot of times if you don't do that, you can break trust. Are you respecting boundaries? Are you showing care? And are you doing it for each other? And then me as the observer, let's say, of the other individual that I'm talking to, are they saying what's on their mind? Are they being transparent? Right? And I'm observing that. And also the straight talk, right? Just what it sounds like and what it is. Just to the point, not mincing any words, and you're going. And you're not afraid that it's gonna, destroy the other individual's feelings. Because you have such a deep-rooted trust and you have a bond with each other that I know that when he says this or she says these words to me, it's coming from a deep place of respect and care. All right, you see how they're all working together? And then the transparency piece it's about visibility and vulnerability. And am I making it visible, to the other individual? Dr. Joe was talking about the kimono paradox earlier, right? And how am I putting myself out there, making certain things visible, knowing that it might not be good, right? Simple example, sales example. Let's say I'm working with one of my team members and I say, hey, expectation today is for you to go get 50 phone calls. And they only get 35 out. Do they hide it or do they tell you? Very simple, right? And if they're very open, right, and they're transparent with that, that's a sign that, hey, there's a deeper level of trust here, because they're willing to be transparent and they're willing to speak their truth and be honest about where their situation is. Now I can seek to understand. Hey, tell me where you're at, right? And so these are the 5 elements of trust that I look for, to be intentional about a relationship. Okay. Who's Alex Berth? What are you hearing right now as I walk through that? Okay, 3 levels of relationships, and I break down this acronym of trust. There's a lot of words and a lot of structure and everything else. What do you think right now Dr. Joe, Alex Burns, former Marine, actually is still a Marine. Once a Marine,
Not
always a Marine,
former,
right?
not former.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say one thing that really came to my mind was not all relationships are equal in the sense of we're on different paths in life. Like, for example, my relationship with you and Austin Cheviron, I would view you guys as a R2 or R3, where maybe you're not as connected with me and you might view me as an R1, or other people. That's just stuff that come to my mind.
Really good. Tucker, what about you?
Yeah, no, I was kind of thinking the same thing. Like, I'm wondering if you can have relationships that on one end are maybe an R2 or R3, but on the other end are sort of an R1. Because there's a lot in that: trust, respect, understanding, straight talk, and transparency. If you're missing 3 of the 5 or even 1 of the 5, is it truly an R2? And kind of just thinking, man, do I even have this R2 with the people who are on my team now?
Nate, do you make contracts with any of your partners here? The contract being that silence is not okay. If you know something that belongs to me, I take you that you're an honest person. So, if I drop my wallet, I trust you're going to pick it up and say, hey, is there a Joe Courier here? But if you know something that's important to me, but you don't tell me, you may tell 5 other people, is that okay? And it may piss me off, by the way, but that's okay too, or no, especially if you're up in rank. I'm not going to go and tell Nate, for example. What's the rules according to, if you see something, say something. Right time, right place, by the way. Or is there no? What's the rules here?
That's really good. So a lot of people.
We often tell lies. We often lie. Or I make up a story in my head. It's not important. They don't want to know that. Sorry.
No, that's good. I'm glad you went there. Tucker, so Dr. Joe says that, right? What goes through your head?
I think, in order, I guess, yeah, in order to have a true, intentional relationship, it really does have to be, intentional on both sides. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, if you know something that's important to me, do you say it? I don't know. I don't know exactly what I think about that, but.
And is it about you, by the way, or is it about me? I don't think he wants to know versus how you show it to me is part of the question. Joe, are you open to some feedback? The answer might be no. You can see it in my body. Why? What the fuck do you want to tell me? Sorry to use the F word. Again, right away, I've answered your question. The answer is at this point, no. Remember, I think if you're going to criticize me or give me feedback, see, some of this, I think we need to define the language. I might be able to say, you say, Joe, I'm really angry about something. You open to some feedback. I'm going to say, yeah. I might say to you, I'm sorry you feel that way. Wow. Will you do me a favor? Let me know when I do that again so we can never in life. By the way, I'm not saying I agree with you. Somebody told me that years ago, Dr. Les Frankfurt, my dear hero. He was a survivor of the concentration camps. And I thought he wanted to fight. He said, no, I wanted to know, is that okay? I wanted to share something with you. By the way, I think it's yours, not mine. And if it's not, let it go. What? What's the rules here? Who the hell are you to versus thank you? Anytime you give me feedback, here's the word. It's called information. And I decide whether it's of value or not versus I'm here to make you look bad. That's the opposite of it. When you're trying to put somebody down, you and I get into something. So, wow, I didn't know I was creating that impact. I didn't even say I did it. I'm just saying, man, whenever you see that, will you let me know? You will have a brother forever, by the way.
We talk about the 4 C's, right? You've all heard me talk about the 4 C's: coaching, communication, commitment, capping, right? The coaching piece, hey, you're expected to coach each other, right? That the fundamental element of that is give and receive feedback. You're obligated to coach each other. You're obligated to give and receive feedback to be on this team. right? That is the rule. And a lot of when we talk about team, this is what we're talking about. Dr. Joe, let me ask you this question. So let's use real estate, okay? A real estate team, you have a team of salespeople, and they are all we're working intentionally about forming partnerships on the team, and but if Johnny does really well, it does not necessarily, I'll use these words, it does not necessarily impact negatively or positively Susie. Okay, because their businesses are independent of one another, but we're still a team. Okay, each individual is dependent on themselves or independent on their own business. Okay, so how do we look at that then? It's not like I have, so let's say, an assistant, where for me to get these activities done or these tasks done, I'm taking this piece of work, giving it to this other individual to get more work done so that I can go out and do it. It's a different type of relationship on a real estate team. You following my question there?
I think so.
Okay, and so
big question.
Yeah, so it's how do I look at a team from, say, this dependent relationship to where I'm giving work to, say, an assistant, versus, which most of us are a part of, say, a real estate team, or I'm leading a real estate team of individuals that are all independent of one another. And how do I get, how do I look at that?
I'll take it too far off the task here. I don't think you're a team when you define that. See, when I look at the team, it's not about what I'm doing, it's about who we are. And here, get ready for one of these bullshit things. You can hear it as that. Business is what we do, not who we are. I am a community of passionate partners who serve the mission and each other. I have an obligation to you in some way. And you to me, by the way. Now you say, oh, here we go, get a violin here. What are the boundaries here? Versus what we do. Most people on level one, they're somewhat closed, somewhat private. If you want to know something, hey, they just ask me and I'll decide. Remember, to really move to R2 isn't about what I want to know about Nate. It's what he wants me to know about Nate. Tell me about your journey, your story. See, I'm taking this concept of team and tightening it a bit. There's a circle here. And that's where the question is, what is the vulnerability condition here in content? Do we ever talk certain things outside of the X's and O's? One of the greatest experiences I ever had is when Steven went over to the Ravens. Mr. Modell was retiring. I'm sitting there with him. He's what teams, players, whatever, coaches. And he asked the question, guys, gals, what's our goal here? What's our mission? What's the main thing? You wear these colors, you never forget it. And they looked at him like that's the stupidest question I ever heard. And you know what their answer in their head was? Win the Super Bowl. So he asked again and again. And finally someone said, Steve, it's to win a Super Bowl. He said, no, that's the outcome. That's not the goal. The goal is the passionate partnership. Watch each other's back. Hold each other accountable. Raise the bar. When I'm not doing what I should, you coming over. And that's the point. What's our mission and what's the outcome here? What's the goal here? Raise our statistics and wealth and whatever. That's an outcome. That is not my goal. And by the way, do I want it? Hell yeah. But it's not the main thing. When I look across that room and see my real partners in that circle, now I'm a wealthy man. Does that make any sense? Or does this come off as Huzenga? I mean, Navajo friend of mine says I can't say bullshit. So he says the Navajo word is Huzenga. So is that wow or Huzenga? Is this guy smoking dope? Is he still on anesthesia from the other day? And what do we keep under our hat as secret? My brother Marine might know this. One of the deepest relationship I ever had with this man, and I would say this without it going anywhere near a time, whatever, he did something that was unimaginable. And weeks later, he took me aside. Can I talk with you? I was burdened. What's the matter? He said, Joe, I pissed my pants when I did that. I said, if you didn't piss your pants, you would have been fucking crazy to do what you did. That's what heroes do. But real men and women, powerful women, don't cry. They wet his pants. He was ashamed of him. What secrets do we carry? Now, by the way, Joe, you're getting way out of, well, then come back and tell me what team means here. Let's tamp it down a bit here and tell me what you want from me. One is, do you want my feedback? Right time, right place. Do you want it just about your task, your job, what we do? What if I see you as my leader talk down to someone in a way that I know you've diminished them and our partnership as a team is, do I ever say something to you? Boy, you better be careful because you want to get your ass kicked and kicked out of the, what's the rules here? You guys must know this if you've ever gone to London. These damn fools ride in the wrong side of the road. Can you imagine? And then Joe thinks, well, it's not the wrong side of the road. It's a different side of the road. They're on the right, I'm on the left. And we're going to collide unless we know the rules of the road. What's the rules here? On your team, you kept throwing out what are some of the core rules of the road? Like, if you see something that seems significant, do you share it? Or do you have the privilege of silence? Now we're in trouble, brother. Take a breath, old guy.
Love it. I can listen to him for days. I tell him this every single time. I go on. Dr.
I have to send him $1 every time I do that. I have to send him $1.
We'll be talking. I ask him a question, and he'll start talking, and then 20 minutes later, this is great.
Sorry.
This is awesome. This is awesome. So beautiful, Dr. Joe, beautiful. And and the question then becomes like, okay, when we're talking about teams, like, why are we doing what we're doing? We talk about mission, like what are we really on a mission to do here? It's not what we do, it's what we're called to do. Right? Like what are we really doing here as within this organization? Like what are we doing? And we're linking arms together. Like I got your back and I know you have mine. Do you have mine? Are you intentional about having mine? If you see something that I'm doing right, wrong, or indifferent, I need you to tell me. Because we all have egos and we all have blind spots.
That's a contract. You need to write a contract with someone. If you see something and your inner circle team, if you see at the right time, right place, by the way, guys, I need you to share that information with me. That's a contract.
Right there. Because what is a contract, Dr. Joe?
A contract is, again, I make a promise. It's a promise made and it's a promise kept. And again, I'm not here to shame you. Hey, Nate, there you go again with that. That's not what we're doing here. This isn't a game. If I see your psychological size and I see somehow you've diminished and you've lowered the size of our team, I'm hoping there's a time and a place. Why? One is I care about you and I selfishly care about me and these other guys and gals around the circle here. And if we have a contract, we're going to talk about things like that. We let abuse go all the time when we have rank and roll. Dad gets away with it. Mom sometimes. Sergeants can talk down to. Come on, guys. I'm not talking about passion. I'm not talking about playing hardball. There's a line. I said this once to Mr. Bishotti, to Stephen. I thought he was going to fire me or kick my ass. And it is, Stephen, there's a line between passion and abuse. And great leaders know where that is. He looked at me and says, are you saying I'm not a good leader? I said, it's good to be king. Are you saying I'm not being a good leader? I'm saying there's a line between passion and abuse, and you can make up all the stories you want in your mind. I said, by the way, if you see a horse come down the street and you see horsemen or hoops there, you could put whipped cream on it with a cherry. It still ain't an ice cream sundae. It's horse shit. You know it, and I know it. Do you guys have real conversations? Or, Joe, you're way out of bounds here. We don't get into passionate conversations. That's okay then. I'm saying if and when, what are the limits here? What are the lines of we drive by the speed limit here. We're here to create more wealth and build more customers who move. Okay, I'm okay with that.
When we get into conversations, right, and how to structure them, I'm going to give you kind of like a 5-step guide right now. Okay, a 5-step guide on how do you have a difficult conversation. And there's a lot of layers. I'm going to look at this from a context of actually a team. Okay, like I'm a team leader of, say, a real estate team or a CEO of a company, and I have a group of people that I am leading. or a peer-to-peer conversation around you're not doing what you said you were going to do or what you're supposed to do. Okay? So step one, check in. How are you? How are you doing right now? Just check in with the person. Step two, state your purpose / reason. Hey, this is what I'm seeing right now, based on X, Y, and Z. Right? Hey, I'm noticing that you are, hey, I've noticed that the last 5 meetings you showed up 15 minutes late. Right? The expectation is that you show up on time or 5 minutes early. Right? So we're stating that. Step 3, seek to understand. And then you loop it. Okay? And what I mean by loop it is, hey, here's another framework. Nate Ammon put this in there too, right? All caps, TED-HW. TED-HW. It's a question framework. So tell me, explain to me, describe to me. Tell me, explain to me, describe to me, TED. Help me understand, H. Walk me through, W. Okay? Tell me, explain to me, describe to me, help me understand, walk me through, TED-HW. Okay? So seek to understand. If you start a question, or a statement with any of those words, it helps open up the individual's mind to speak. Okay? And so they're going to say something along the lines, hey, help me understand why you've been showing up for, late for the last 5 meetings without letting anyone know ahead of time. Help me understand what's going on. I've been, needing to drop my kid off to preschool. Okay. Why haven't you told anyone? And there's an excuse. Okay, so now you loop it. Okay, so this is what you're stating, right? So you restate, what it is that they said. You force clarity there, right? And you loop it, and they say, no, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant. Okay, so this is what you mean. So you have this infinite loop on that step 3, right? You keep seeking clarity, seeking clarity, seeking clarity. TED-HW, tell me, explain to me, describe to me. H is help me understand. W is walk me through. And these are great questions. I mean, you could use these on consultation meetings, right? Just great. I mean, you can use these of anything, right? Hey, help me understand why you want to move right now. Right? You can use these. Hey, tell me what you want to do in life, right? It's a really good question-based framework. And so step 3 is what you want to seek to understand, okay? And then you want to loop it to really force clarity. And you keep asking, you restate what it is that they said to you so they can hear it. And likely they're going to say, yeah, that's it, or no, that's not what I meant. Okay, well, tell me what you meant. And you keep doing that until you get to that specific point and the specific reason that you're searching for. You keep asking, you keep asking, you keep asking. Then step 4, then be understood. All right, so based on what they're saying, hey, well, all good, family first. Take your daughter to preschool, right? But what I need from you moving forward is you to communicate that ahead of time to me and to the team. And so step 5 is, moving forward, get on the same page. So moving forward, this is what I need from you. Are we good with that? And you're forcing that clarity. So you're checking in, you're stating the reason and stating the purpose. You're seeking to understand, and you're forcing clarity around that. You're looping that, that step 3. Then you're being understood. And then you move forward to get on the same page. So real nice framework. And so when you're having conversations, with individuals, it helps create awareness around, how to structure a conversation that could be difficult. And while you're doing that, you're also being aware of, okay, well, what level of relationship do we have? And okay, all relationships are based on trust and different elements of trust. And there's these 5 elements of trust that we just learned about. Okay, trust, respect, understanding, straight talk, and transparency. And I want to have Dr. Joe talk about this in a second here. But there's this this is the conversations like these. It's part science and part art. Okay, there's a lot of there's structure to a conversation, but then there's this art form and this feel, and this 5-step process might not be linear. It might not be 1, 2, 3, 4. I might have to jump to another one and then go back and forth and feel the conversation and have, if I'm speaking my mind, I'm having this straight talk and being transparent, I might take a step back and say, hey, no, this is what it is. So Dr. Joe, can you talk to the art form, if you will, of these conversations?
I'm not sure I can do justice to it. I'm really trying to digest what you're saying. Number of possibilities here. The art form of this is also, like you say, you're trying to create a loop here. You're trying to, understand where the other person is coming from. One of the things we use, one of the things that we pin on the wall there is, the stories that people make up in their minds, finding out what the story is that they're making up in their mind, finding out what their truth is in the moment. They're not stupid people. They're either self-protecting, or they've been taught something, or frankly, they're dumb. And I don't spell that D-U-M-B, that they're ignorant. It's D-U-M. They don't understand their motivation. Why are you doing this? Well, that's what Dad did, or that's what my boss told me to do. I don't understand the I with the M, the impact I'm creating, the motivation. Helping people truly that you're trying to build some type of art with them because you give a darn. Now, am I selfish too in terms of that I want something from this? Yes, I'm trying to build a relationship. And I'm hoping again that it will serve you and it will serve me. So, again, I don't know. There's a lot of places we could go. What is the story that you're making up in your mind? It's called a belief. What are some of the beliefs that you need to re-examine? Are they serving you? Are they serving us as a team? Or are they the stories you're making up that are somehow you're repeating the history of the past, and how did it work for them? Oh, by the way, Mom left when I was 12. Well, how is that working in a relationship? Does that make any sense, or is that just more gibberish?
That's really good. That's really good. What questions from the group? Let's we have a few minutes left. What's top of mind for you all right now?
And what level of relationship do you want with people? What is your ultimate goal? I don't mean you're going to get it within a snap of a finger, but do you ever huddle up and start building art? Or do you just assume it's going to come down the road some afternoon around 2 o'clock? And by the way, what are the boundaries there? And I'm not asking you that you should open the kimono completely. That's not what I'm asking you. My wife, after all of these years, I've been with her since 1962. There may be something she's more comfortable telling a woman that she might not tell me, or whatever. But what are the truths here? What are the boundaries here? What is the story that you're making up in your mind, but have you ever shared it with me? She thought I was just trying to control the game here. I thought I was supposed to get to the truth. My truth, by the way, because I didn't even, what you said just a moment ago, I wasn't looking to see what her truth was. Didn't dawn on me. I figured that would show up. Boy, how's that working for you?
Really good.
I
Jessica.
still worry, by the way. I think I told Nate this, that I think my wife, she treats me like a sex object, and I worry about those things at this age. By the way, it's not true, but one can dream. I wouldn't mention that to her. No, honey, I'll close the door now. One can dream. The stories we make up in our mind. Oh, well.
I love it. I love it. Jessica, you had your hand up.
Yeah, because I was going to say, when I know that we've discussed this before in the team's coaching program, but it's like when you have a team and, you do need to have those check-ins with your members to go over the boundaries or to go over what the goals are and the motivation. It's the other question in my mind is, how many times do we let somebody slide? If they haven't been honest with you, or how many times you allow that, and just a real quick backstory is I had a friend I considered a very close friend. We told each other a lot of things. She wanted to buy a house, and we were very close. I watched her kids when she was 6. She would watch mine. And she wanted to buy a house. I was helping her, uploading her documents for her, introducing her to lenders, helping her get ready to buy a house. A couple weeks goes by, and she comes to my door with a bottle of tequila and was like, I have to tell you something. And I'm like, yeah, I hadn't seen you in a while. And she says, listen, you are awesome. Please don't be mad at me. I think I'm going to see houses with somebody else. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I thought you were my closest friend. I thought we had, and I trusted her. I thought she trusted me. And when I asked her fully why, she said, well, Jessica, she said, I can only afford, like $300,000 house. And you sell $1 million homes. You just don't understand what it's like to truly help someone as a first-time buyer. And I'm like, what is she talking about? We all help first-time buyers. Like, I don't care what your price point is. But I guess I didn't fully communicate that to her. And so now my question is she doesn't trust me enough to come forward with me in advance and ask me in advance, hey, I feel like I'm a first-time home buyer. Can you help me with this? She went behind my back, asked some other friends, got a recommendation to another realtor and another lender, pre-qualified, went to see houses, then came and told me, is she still my friend?
Yeah. So the way I see this is, okay, there's different aspects of trust, right? And she didn't understand, right? She didn't, like TRUST, right? She didn't understand, what it is that you could do for her.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You hear the belief fault? There's also a belief in here, Nate.
Yes.
Belief you just show. She went behind my back, that son of a bitch. Is there another one? I wonder what the story is she's making up in her mind. Maybe that is, I don't want to lose her trust and respect. It's important to me versus that son of a bee. She's like a snake. Well, that's a big story you're making up. And you may be right, by the way. Are you, though? And by the way, have you two ever looked at some of these things that would have avoided this collision? What are the stories we're making up in our mind? Mm-hmm. And what did it do to the relationship? It would take you from a high 3 to a 0 in a moment. How dare you? I can't trust you. And yet she might start to cry in the opposite and say, I don't want her to think I'm a loser. I can't afford the types of, I only dream that I could be like you. She might tell you stories that would raise your ego. Do you know how powerful you are and how you come across? People tell you that, but you may minimize that, say, shucks. She's probably telling you, I really struggle with some of this. I wish I could. Again, I think that would open up a dynamite conversation and avoid these types of collisions within the family. Without these happen all the time. Son of a bitch went behind my back, you boy, body language. And I don't blame that. Please don't hear any criticism. It breaks my heart that she would do that to me. Yes?
Yes.
Truth, what's the bridge? How do we build the bridge here instead of burning it here? Going forward, that might be talk about a difficult conversation, Nate. Boy, that might be, how do you prepare for a conversation like that? And it's often would start out with people putting their hands on their hips saying, I want to tell you something. And then we're off to the races versus how could you craft a conversation that's called win-win? And I don't mean being, let's be nice. Let's all be nice. Look, men are taught don't ever cry. Women are taught to stay out of their power. You got going leaning into power. She may not be able to do that yet.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Joe. We will see you next week is rest week. So we'll see you all in 2 weeks and looking forward to it.